Hey there, I'm your host Lesawi, and welcome to the Easy Inventory series. So this is a 4-episode series, and I'll show you how we can create an inventory. Pretty simple, very basic. We can drop stuff around, pick it back up. If we have multiple stuff, we drop it, it's gonna drop multiple things. We can pick stuff up, just like so. And that's pretty much it. We can also swap stuff around. Not much to it. So with that said, if it looks interesting, let's begin. For this tutorial, we are going to need a few assets, so let me show you what I have. So in the content drawer, I've added a new folder called assets, and in here I have some icons, some meshes, and some sound effects. So with that, let's go ahead and create the first thing. So in the settings tab on the top right, we'll go here, go to project settings, and we want to add a new trace channel, and we'll be using this to interact with our items. So hit new trace channel. For the name, we can call it interactive, and by default, we'll just ignore and hit accept. Next, let's go into the content drawer, and over here, create a new folder called interaction. Let's give it a color, perhaps something like that will do. Let's open it up. And in here, then, we want to go ahead to blueprint and create a new blueprint interface. And let's call it BPI for blueprint interface underscore interaction. And let's open that up. Now in here then, we have a option to add functions on the right hand side. So if we click on the first one or press F2, we should be able to rename it, and we'll call it interact with. Now for this, on the inputs, we want to add an interactor, which is going to be ourselves, interactor for the name. And the type is going to be of actor. So let's search actor and do object reference. Now we'll add one more, and this will be for displaying the message that the item has. So whatever item we want to pick up. So we'll call it look at, and we want to do an output, and the output is going to be of type text. And for the name itself, we can give it a name message. Let's compile and save that then. Next, let's go ahead and create another folder called UI or user interface. Let's open that up and create another folder called MUI for materials user interface. And in here, we'll create a material. Let's call it M underscore interaction UI. So this will go for the interaction UI we're creating. Let's open it up. Now on the material domain, we'll change it to user interface. And for the blend mode, we want to change it to translucent. Next, let's go ahead and grab a linear gradient. And from the U gradient, we'll drag out and do 1 minus to inverse it. And we'll get a multiply node twice. And the reason we're doing it twice is if we drop the little bar here, this is the result we're kind of getting. Now we can multiply it again to get a much stronger effect. So if you do 4, this works quite well, and then we can plug this into the final color and the opacity. Just like that, we get this kind of result. So let's apply that and then save. So with this finished, let's go back to our UI folder and let's go ahead, right click, do user interface, widget blueprint. And for our widget, let's call it WB underscore interaction UI. And let's open that up. In here, we want to add a border. So let's go ahead and add a border. With this, for the brush, we have our own, we just made. So M underscore interaction UI. There we are. For the color, play around with it. This one kind of looks nice. And we want to center align that and center align vertically. Next, we want to grab a text. And this is the text we're going to see when we're trying to interact or pick up an item. So drag that into a border. For the font, we can leave it as 24, or what I like to do is change it to 14. For the text, this doesn't really matter, this will be changed. But here, we want to make it variable, so with that we can change it. And for the text itself, we'll do txt underscore item message. Or just message, whichever you like. So with that already looking nice, we can compile and save that. And let's head over to the event graph. Now in the event graph, we can get rid of event tick and event construct. We can drag out our message Again, if you don't see this, it's because you haven't clicked variable, so make sure you do that. Then from here, we'll do set text, like so. And we want to grab a hold of this. So we'll do promote variable, call it message. And out here, we'll do is empty. We want to check, is this empty? Now, if it is, what we'll do is we'll do set visibility. And the visibility on this channel will do a select. And then the parameter will be this one. So a Boolean. So if the text is empty, if that's true, we don't want to display anything on the screen. So we'll have it collapsed. Collapsed means it doesn't take any space in the UI space itself. It's just gone. Visible, it's still there, but we just don't see it. So we'll have it as collapsed. And then false we'll leave as not hit testable. So we see it, but we can't click on it. And that's the idea we kind of want to work with. So next we'll do a custom event like so. Let's call it set message. So we have this message, it exists, but we need to give it a value somehow. We need to pass in a value. So we'll be passing it in through this event. With that, we'll get this or set it, drag this purple pin or pink pin into here, and you'll get a input, and then we'll drag this into the set message. So we're calling this event, setting that, and then this will check and run the code. So let's compile and save. Next, let's go ahead and create another widget blueprint, and this one we'll call WB_player HUD. And let's open it up. In here then, I want to grab a canvas panel, and inside this space is where our interaction UI is going to be, so search for it. And that's the widget we just made. We can drag it in. Now in here, if you click on anchors, while holding Control and Shift, you can press any of these, it'll snap it there. So we'll snap it at the bottom, and we'll pick it off a little bit. So on position Y, we'll do -30. We can do size X to be 400 and size Y to be 70. And this is the kind of result we want. So we're done. We can compile and save that then. Next, let's go ahead to the content folder. We'll create another folder called player. Let's give it a color as well. Set color, a bluish, something like that. So let's open that. And in here, we want to add a controller and a game mode. Now, by default, you should have one here, Blueprints game mode, third person game mode. Now we'll be creating our own. So back in the player folder, we'll go ahead and go to Blueprint class, player controller. We'll do BP_my controller, like so. And for the game mode base, we'll do BP_my game mode. And just like that, we then need to be using those. So we don't see this now, but if you click on settings, go to world settings, we get this extra tab over here. And with that, we can see the game mode, third person game mode. We want to change it to the one we just made. So my game mode. Then for the selected game mode here, we can select our controller, my controller. The default pawn class will be our third person character. So now if we hit play, it should run this game mode with this third person character. So this guy here, and it does, and with our new controller. So it does that, which is great. Next, let's actually save this and open up our controller. And on the event graph, we want to create a function. Let's go and let's call it display player HUD. In here, we'll simply do a create widget. So, and let's call our player HUD. We can promote it to a variable, always good to have a reference. So WB_player HUD. And then we'll add it to the viewport. So what we are doing here is that we want to call this widget as soon as we begin the game. And if we're running our controller, this will be immediately added to the start of the game to our screen. So let's compile and save that. Next, let's go ahead and create another function, and we'll call this display inventory UI. In here then, we want to get our player character. And we want to do a get component by class. Now, the component we want to use is our inventory component, but we haven't created it just yet. So if we go to our content drawer and let's create another folder called inventory. Let's also give it a color just to distinguish between our created folders, something like an aqua color. And let's open it up. In here then, right click, go to Blueprint class, select actor component, and we'll call this BPC for blueprint component underscore inventory. And just like that, we'll do work on it later, but let's save it. And now that we have it created, in here, we can call it. So BPC underscore inventory right there. And let's check if it is valid, because it could not be valid. We first need to add it to the player. Next, we are also going to need a part we don't have just yet. So we need to create it. And for that, we'll go to our inventory folder again, create a new folder called UI. Let's open that up. In here, we'll create a user widget. And this user widget will be for our inventory. So let's call it WB underscore inventory UI. And all we need to do for the moment, in the event graph, we need to pass in a variable, which we'll be setting here. So for that, if we go to variables right there, we can call it our inventory component. And for the type, it's going to be BPC underscore inventory. And we want to make it instance editable and expose on spawn. So these two parameters will allow us to pass in that value in here then. Because if we go back to our controller and if we do create widget and select our inventory widget, now this parameter becomes exposed. And if you've added this before and don't see it, simply refresh and it should show up. And just like that, we can pass in that value then from this component, and everything that this has, this will have to. Next, we'll do promote to variable, WB underscore inventory UI, and we'll do add to viewport. And let's then compile and save. Back inside the event graph, we then want to be able to open our inventory. Now for that, we need a key that lets us do that. So in the content drawer, third person character input, we'll create a new input action. So we'll go to inputs, input action, IA underscore inventory. And let's save it, go back a folder to our IMC underscore default, and let's create a new mapping, IA underscore inventory. Now add whatever keys you like. I like to do I key and a tab key, so we'll do that. We'll save it. Let's also, while we're here, let's add another input for interacting. So a input action IA underscore interact. So that way we don't have to come back in here. If we go back, IMC default, we're here, and we'll do IA underscore interact, and we'll interact with our E key then. So once you're happy, let's save and exit. And back inside of our event graph on the controller, we want to grab that input action then. So IA underscore inventory. And on started, triggered is going every frame. We don't want that. We just want on once. So once we've pressed it, we want to check, is our inventory UI valid? Because if it's valid, it means it's already on the screen. So we want to hide it, not display it. So in that case, we'll do remove from parent. And on the other hand, if it's not valid, we'll add it to the screen. So we'll do display inventory UI. And we want to then grab this reference and we'll set it to be nothing. So if we're removing it from the screen, we want it to be also set to nothing. And for a good measure, we'll do print string inventory closed. And copy that then and do inventory opened. Okay, and let's compile and save that. So that's us done with the controller. We can fully exit. Next, we want to go ahead and create an interaction system. So in our interaction folder, we want to right click and go to blueprint class and select actor component, calling it BPC underscore interaction. And let's open that up. In here then, what I'd like to do is I want to create a new function, and we'll call it get interaction UI. And what we'll do is we'll get our player controller, and we'll do cast to my controller. So that's the one we made. And because our interaction UI is in there, we can get access to it. So we'll do get player HUD. And inside of our player HUD, what do we have? We have our interaction UI, like so. We can then do a return node, and we can return that there, just like that. So let's exit then and create another function, this time for our interaction trace. Interaction trace. So we want to get the owner, so ourselves. We're the owner of this component if we add it to ourselves. So we'll do that later. And we want to get the actor's location. And then we want to get the forward actor vector. And we want to multiply this by a distance. So this is our origin and this is our offset. So our offset, if you right click on this yellow pin and go to single float or double precision, doesn't really matter. We can set this to something like 100. So 100 units away from our player. And then we can add this to our cells here. So drag this at the bottom. Control left mouse to drag, by the way. Just drag into there. And we'll do a sphere trace by channel. And this is what we want to use. So our starting position is simply this. And our end position is our origin plus the offset. This goes in there. Looking nice. Now for the radius, you want to give it something because we're using a capsule. So 70 should work for me. Now, this is where our interactive trace channel comes in, the one we made at the start. If you don't see it, simply refresh or recompile everything and then it should show up. For the draw type, we'll do for one frame just so we see it in action. Then on return value, we'll grab a branch. So B left mouse to get yourself a branch. And out hit, we'll do a break. And we're interested in the actor we've hit. So this guy here. And we'll promote to variable, calling it BP, let's call it target actor. Simple as that. And we'll promote it to a variable only if does object implement interface. And we want to check if our actor implements our BPI underscore interaction interface. So if it does, then we'll promote it to a variable. At the moment, we don't have any items. We'll create it. So we'll get to that in a moment. We want to then connect this there. And if we're valid, we'll promote it here. And if not, well, then we'll promote this to nothing. So the value of this will be nothing. Same here. If it is valid, we then have access to our interaction UI. We have it right there. We can also make this a pure function. So click pure. And out here, we can do look at message. And then the message we can set from here. Set message. Like so. And we're golden. And then for these guys here, we can copy and set the message to be nothing. Because there is nothing there to be shown. We don't want anything on the screen. Paste. And looking nice. Okay. And that's all we have to do in here. So we'll come back and then hide this if we don't want to see it on the screen. But for now, just to test it. So compile and save. On the event graph then, on event begin play, we'll do a set timer by event. Now this timer can run every 0.2 or 0.1 seconds. It's up to you. You could even do this on event tick, if you will. I just like to use set timer by event. We'll do a custom event called update interaction. Drag this little red square into here. So it's going to go bam, bam, bam. And then we'll do this function here that we made, interaction trace. And you want to make sure this is looping because we want to constantly run this. Next, let's go ahead and make use of our interact input action. So ia_interact. We want to click on the dropdown and on started. So once, it happens once, we'll get our target actor, convert to a validated get. So if it is valid, we'll do something with it. Now with that, we want to do a get component by class. Now we don't have this component. We haven't made it just yet. So every item is going to have an item component, and this will be added to the parent class. Now we need to first make it. So if we go to our inventory folder, create another folder here called item data. Let's open it, right click, go to blueprint class and actor component, ppc_item data. Now we don't have to do anything with it just yet. It needs to exist. Let's open it up and just add one thing. So if we go to class settings, we want to add in our interface. Because the rule is if our component doesn't have the interface, well, then we can't interact with it. So we need to add this interface here. Compile a save, go back. And let's also compile that and search for our item data. And if this is valid, so is valid, what we'll do is we'll then interact with it. And because we've added this interaction component in here, we click on the first one and it's kind of yellowish color. And we know it's the right one then. And for the interactor, we can do get owner. So we're getting ourselves like so. Whoops. And we're done with the interaction system fully, I believe. So let's compile and save. So this is it for the video. In the next episode, we'll be working on the item data and the items. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed. And if you did, leave a like. And as always, happy developing.